Hi, everyone. Welcome to our presentation, Tilting Towards Success with Scaffolds, Supporting Complex Instruction with Transparency and Purpose. My name is Matt Callison. I'm the Director of Innovation at South Fayette School District.
Hi, and I'm Alexandria Fox, and I'm an instructional designer with the IUPUI School of Education.
And my name is Carrie Hagan. I'm a clinical associate professor of law at Indiana University's Robert H. McKinney School of Law.
And today in our presentation, we're going to talk about how to use Canvas in a way to strategically multiply your presence and expertise in a classroom. And so really we're looking at how can I use Canvas as an educator to introduce complex ideas and skills in a way that saves class time while also providing scaffolded support for students. And as we go through this, we will be looking at how to use the basic Canvas features in a sophisticated way that provides students with scaffolding, transparency, and purpose. So again, you're saving time as a teacher, and at the same time, students are experiencing your support and expertise through Canvas. And with that, I will hand this off to, oh, well, actually I won't hand that off quite yet. Thanks for moving the slide. So looking at Canvas, we'll be talking about using the following features in Canvas: organizing content in modules, using pages, discussions, assignments, a video embedding tool, whether that's the Canvas video tool or another tool, using quizzes, and then using headings. And so what we're talking about is not just using those as individual pieces of Canvas, but really organizing them in a strategic way to provide that transparency and support and scaffolding for students so that they can navigate really complex ideas and learn complex skills in a way that is super effective. And with that, I will hand this off to Alexandria.
Thank you. So today, as Matt mentioned, we're going to be talking about a couple different frameworks. And the first one that I will introduce is the Scaffolds framework. And the inspiration for this framework really came from, thinking about as educators, we struggle to introduce these complex ideas, especially whether it's in a face-to-face course or online. And so using scaffolding, which is an evidence-based approach to progressively introduce skills and while supporting students and then removing those supports down the road. And so, so thinking about those that context and how we can break down this very complex skill into ways that the students can learn and then apply on their own. And so scaffolding, again, is temporary but essential mentor assistance that facilitates learners move toward new skills, concepts, or levels of understanding. So Scaffolds, which is the framework that we will be describing today, stands for first, skill is defined. And what that means is that you're really telling what the learners are going to walk away with. The context is explained. And what that means is that you're letting the learners know where they will see this, not just out of context on a piece of paper, but showing them real examples. And the A is for access, examples, and context. And so with that, you're going to allow the students to see examples in context, and not just one. It's recommended more than 1, 2, or 3 so that they can see it a variety. One of the first F is for formative assessment with immediate feedback. So just a small opportunity for the learners to practice and see if they're grasping that first concept that you're introducing. The next F is for further clarification with more context. And so with that, what it is, there are going to be non-examples. And so providing an example of a non-example and letting them see that and work with that. the O is for opportunity for application practice. And so diving a little bit deeper from that first formative assessment and giving them a chance to really apply and see if they understand it. The L is they will submit their application. And then the D is for a deep dive into expert model of application practice. And so with that, as the expert, you could provide a video of yourself completing the same work, and so they could see the process. And the S is for self-evaluation with recap. And recap is actually, we presented that in another segment with using recap for formative assessment and feedback with students is the name of that presentation. So if you want to learn more about recap, you can visit that presentation. And so we're going to talk about our design challenge today of how can we scaffold student learning without increasing instructor time during the semester. So by applying the scaffolds framework, you're really not, it shouldn't take extra time during the semester. It might take a little bit of extra time really breaking it down, but then it would save time down the road in the semester. And so I'm going to hand it over to Carrie to talk about the specific example that we used.
And just to sort of tag team with what Alexandria said about instructor time, I know that when you look at that scaffolds graphic, there are 9 individual pieces. We just want to assure you that even though there are 9 pieces, just as Alexandria said, the main initial putting together the pages and the examples, that really is just a bit of front-loaded work. But after that, it really just does run itself. So just because you see that there might be 9 steps involved, do not panic as an instructor, because it really is easy to implement and easy to replicate for other concepts that you might want to use it for as a teacher. So don't let the large word itself scare you off. The reason that we decided to try and figure out this for an online course, and again, you can use it in person and as well, is because one of the skills that I have to teach in law school is called case briefing. And that's mainly because in law school, we don't use basic textbooks, we use what are called case books. That just means that instead of containing all text, they contain mainly court cases. Court cases, when you read them, have sort of a formulaic way of presenting information. And it's these pieces of information in cases that law students are commonly asked about in their law school classes. But it takes some practice and it takes some time learning how to read those cases and learning how to pick out those pieces of information. And so generally speaking, for each court case, it should contain 6 to 7 concrete pieces of information. And by teaching students what those pieces of information look like, they should be able to pull those out so that they're prepared to answer in class. And again, the main reason for this approach is just getting them to learn how to read those cases so that they're prepared for class and they understand what it is that they're reading. So this is the basic concept that I was trying to introduce. Now, the way that we implemented it in the course, it was for undergraduate students that I was teaching this to. And so what we did initially was we did what we normally do. We introduced the concept. I created some slides that walked them through what those concrete pieces were that I wanted them to identify. I gave them a review handout so that they could go back and learn from the wisdom that I had shared with them on those slides. I gave them a template so they could actually practice it with themselves. And I gave them a court case for them to use that template with. Looking back, though, we realized that we didn't provide any instructions on how to move through the slides. This seems like a very small thing, but I received a lot of communication from students about all they could see was the briefing a case slide on the very first page. And so again, it was just one of those moments where you realize the little things that are needed for this sort of thing. So this is how I had set up this assignment for this initial course. When I asked them to brief their first case using that template, I then provided what I thought was an effective review. I gave them slides again, not that I told them how to click through it, of how I identified the information in the case that I was asking them to find. I again didn't give them any instructions to move through the slides, but these slides represented all of the answers that I was looking for. And at the very end of it, I had an ungraded discussion where students were given the opportunity to ask any questions about what it was that I had provided, and not one student asked a question. And so I really had no idea whether or not they had even bothered to look at what it was that I was sharing with them, and they understood what it was that I was trying to prepare them for. The other thing that I noticed too is that this was the main assignment where I introduced this skill. I did have them brief cases twice later in the semester. They had absolutely no idea what they were doing. And so clearly there was a gap between the way that I was presenting this information initially and what it was that they were taking away from it, which honestly was about nothing. And so when we had to think about, is there a better way for us to do that? We turned to this concept of scaffolding, and we reframed the exercise. So again, just for reference, this is what our scaffolds acronym and our approach looks like. We just broke things down into smaller, more concrete pieces. We paid attention to what it was we were defining and explaining. We took some time not just to tell them what we wanted, but provide examples. And the examples were really helpful because not every case reads the same. And even if you're teaching a different exercise, not every example is going to be the same. So it illustrates the differences. It gets them to think a little bit more critically about what it is that they're working on. And then they get a chance to practice it, and they immediately get feedback on whether or not they are grasping that. And then we decided that, providing one sort of set of examples was helpful, but we really wanted to make sure that they were getting that progressive skill building. So we gave more clarification with additional context, and then again, another opportunity to practice. They turn it in, and then instead of just posting Google Slides, I recorded a video going over what the answers were for the actual assignment. And then we did have them reflect on that with this reflective framework called Recap. So what we'd like to do now is just show you the way that we implemented these sorts of steps into the exercise for the course the second time. So instead of just throwing some Google Slides there with a paragraph talking about what case briefing is, we really broke it down. We created a page that really defines what the skill is. So they had an idea of what it was that they were going to be doing. And my slides didn't provide them this level of detail. So we give them some context. We introduced the skill. I talked about how it is that they were supposed to present the information. And then at the very bottom, we did use a tool that not everyone has access to. It's called Quick Check, but it's just a very simple quiz sort of mechanism, reiterating that they've read the information on the page above. And so even if you don't have access to something like Quick Check, you can implement a couple of questions if you want to see if they have read and understand the above. So here's how we explain the skill. But then in addition to explaining the skill, we wanted to give them context. So rather than having them click through slides, we really went into a deeper dive on presenting what we wanted them to pay attention to. And we went ahead and put slides in, but we did provide directions on what they needed to do this time so that students actually understood what it is that they needed to do. We then outlined what it was they were going to be doing, so they had a little bit of time to prepare, and we just again implemented a small quiz at the end to make sure they understood what it was that they were trying to do. The next piece of it was giving them some examples. And so for this particular skill, again, I had 7 very concrete things that I needed to introduce, and get them to identify and reinforce. So for each one of those pieces, we gave 3 examples. And that was Alexandria's idea as the course designer. 1 example wouldn't suffice, 2 would be okay, but 3 really gave them an opportunity to see what each piece looked like in a variety of contexts. And then once we did that, again, we had them test themselves with a quiz just to see if they were identifying the information correctly. Once we did this, so this is an example of how we introduce it. We give them an opportunity to practice. We gave them a little bit more context and clarification. And so you can think about as an instructor whether or not you have this additional piece, because again, sometimes showing them an example is a really great thing to do in the beginning. Are there other things that you want to emphasize on the back end? And so that's what we did here. That's helpful for this exercise because for each one, we needed to emphasize what it was at the beginning, and then we needed to emphasize things they needed to look for at the end. Once they learned fully the piece that I was expecting them to, then we had them complete an assignment using the direction that we gave them. We did that using Google, and we gave them a template because it was so easy for them just to download that template and fill it in using the steps and the direction that we'd already given them. And then once they submitted the assignment, that's when we went ahead and gave them an opportunity to reflect on what it was that they had turned in based on this video, this expert model, which really was an opportunity for me to go over what the answers were for the assignment, and then they could compare their work to that, and then they could reflect on how they felt about their progress with it. And so with this scaffolded approach, students were so much more successful than they had been initially. When I asked them to do the additional case briefs after having them complete this first skill building assignment, they did exceptionally better on the later assignments because I had broken it down in a way that not only clearly introduced everything, but it reinforced their knowledge. It gave them examples. They had more opportunities to practice. And as a result, they were more confident in their application of the skill going forward. And so with that, when we look at the scaffolds framework again, don't panic at the length of it. You can see just by walking through how we redesigned it, that it just really takes sort of an idea of how you want to map this out. What skill do you want to focus on? Are there examples that you can draw on? And how exactly is it that you want to lay that out? When we talk about scaffolds, we can think about the tools that we just went over again that we used in the course. And when we break it down into a concrete list, when you're thinking about scaffolding a complex concept, these are the sorts of things that we talked about and ended up implementing in the redesign. We liked the use of graphics. We created some visual aids. Again, we chunked content. We didn't just throw it all out there. We really broke it down so that they had a progressive way to move through the material. We gave examples that illustrated what it was that we were showing them. We gave them templates, so everyone's answers were consistent and they had a format to turn those assignments in with. They were able to practice with feedback, and then we modeled what it was that we wanted them to get out of the assignment in the end, and we had them reflect. And I'll turn it over to Matt now, who'll just go a little bit more into detail about ways that you can do this in your course and some help to do that.
Thank you, Carrie. So to help you out, we did create a guide for you, a planning guide to help you think through a concept or skill that you want your students to learn. Maybe it's something in one of your classes that you're just pulling your hair out with, because no matter what you've tried so far, there's a large group of students that just don't get it. Like what we explained here, this process can really help address that frustration on your students' part and your part. And so we put together this planning guide that helps you think through what's an application in your course, and then just helps guide you through a thinking process in terms of the skill, how you might break that down into the different pieces that Carrie described, and then help you organize that in an efficient way for your Canvas course. And so if you go to this link, the bit.ly/scaffolds guide, you'll be presented with a template in Google Drive that you can make a copy of and then use that to help guide you in creating and applying this scaffolds approach. The other piece I wanted to share with you, as you looked at the examples, one of the ways that we supported students' success through this scaffolds process is that we use this research-based tilt or transparency in learning and teaching approach. We incorporated that into the different Canvas assignments. If you go to this QR code link, you'll be presented, you'll go to the research site of the university that came up with this tilt approach, and you'll be presented with some templates and information that might help you understand this approach. But basically, in its essence, this tilt approach is very simple to implement, but yet powerful for students because it does provide clarity and transparency in terms of what they need to do for a particular assignment. And that ends up saving you time because you don't have to answer as many questions from students about what they need to do, what types of examples and things that you're looking for as a teacher. So really it's helping you communicate to students the purpose of an assignment, which is really can just be 1 to 2 sentences about why you're having students complete this activity or assignment. It is also then clarifying for students the tasks that they need to complete in order to successfully finish the activity or assignment. And then finally, it is outlining for students in a very clear way, either through a rubric or a checklist, the criteria for success. So how are you going to be evaluating this work? What are you looking for from a teacher standpoint? And by clarifying the purpose, tasks, and criteria ahead of time for an assignment or activity, you really are helping students understand what they need to do. And so they spend most of their time actually doing the work that you want them to do and much less time trying to figure out what the heck you want them to do. And so it's a very simple process that is very powerful. And so if you go to that link, you'll have some information that you can follow up with. And then thank you, Alexandria. And then we also have a Canvas template all ready for you to go and to use. And so if you go to this link, bit.ly tilt template, it will take you to a Google Drive folder where you can download a copy of the tilt assignment, and then you can upload that right into your Canvas course. And again, we're sharing this with you this way instead of through Canvas Commons because we've all experienced some issues with accessing materials shared on Canvas Commons, and we wanted to make this a seamless approach for you. So if you go to that link, you can download the template that Alexandria is showing you right now, and then simply upload that to your course. But on this template, again, there's just a really clear area that's communicated with headings, what the purpose of the assignment is, what the tasks are that you want students to complete, and then how are you going to evaluate the assignment. And with that, we really thank you for your time. We hope you walked away with some understanding about how you can better structure and scaffold in Canvas this teaching of really complex ideas and skills, and doing so in a way where you're sharing your expertise through videos, providing feedback for students through quizzes and different formative activities. And as I started with, if you're able to take a point of frustration for one of your classes and use this scaffolds approach, it's a great way to maximize your class time and to provide a meaningful interactive homework experience for students. So thank you so much. We hope this was helpful for you, and please check out our resources that we've shared. Thanks.